What's up, guys? I'm EJ, and I'm joined by Kendall, and thank you so much for checking out this edition of our virtual NBA Draft War Room. Today, we're going to be talking about the Memphis Grizzlies. Kendall, the Grizzlies, really surprised people. Had a really great season. For the most of the season, they were in that 8th spot. They looked like they were poised to make a playoff berth, led by a Rookie of the Year, Ja Morant. Came up just a little bit short when things got to Orlando. Competition a little tougher. They didn't seem to be able to hold up under that kind of scrutiny, and they just barely missed the playoffs, losing the play-in round against the Portland Trail Blazers. But still, a really good season to look back on, I think, for obviously first-year coach Taylor Jenkins and that young Grizzlies team. Really surprised a lot of people this year.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Ja Morant, one of the more dynamic rookies we've seen in a long time. Like you mentioned, Rookie of the Year. Taylor Jenkins was, obviously a candidate for a lot of people for Coach of the Year. And really, that team really galvanized around Ja. We saw guys like Jaren Jackson take another step from his rookie year. We saw guys like Dylan Brooks, D'Anthony Melton, Jonas Valanciunas really step up. Obviously the whole Andre Iguodala situation, I think, put another chip on that back. That was a Grizzlies team that played with the grit and grind mentality of years past that we had seen with, the Zach Randolph, Tony Allen days. And a lot of that is because, they follow the leader, and that's Ja Morant. He plays with that grit and that feistiness and that mentality, even though he's not Patrick Beverley. He plays with a chip on his shoulder at all times and not scared of anybody, and that reflected from the rest of the team. That reflected upon the rest of the team, and I think that this pick, it will be interesting to see whether or not they get a guy that also fits that mentality as well.
And this is a very different situation from last year, because last year, you're picking number 2, and you're looking at trying to get a franchise changing player, and it appears that they got that with Ja Morant. Here, no first round pick. Only picking number 40, so how you try to find a way to fit a player who can come in and play a role and be a contributor long term, with obviously not nearly as much value as you had in last year's draft. So it's a totally different situation. I think that the Grizzlies, led by Jason Wexler, they've shown an ability to make shrewd roster moves, and I think that we'll see what they're able to do with this pick. So let's get into it with the Memphis Grizzlies. So they finished with a record of 34-39. They came up just short when it came to advancing into the NBA playoffs. They own pick number 40. That is the only pick that they have in this draft. For team needs, I put down outside shooting, Kendall. Last year they finished 25th in three-pointers made. They were 24th in three-pointers attempted, and 23rd and three-point field goal percentage. So not only were they not really taking all that many threes, they didn't shoot it at a particularly high clip. And this is not a three-point shooting team. And again, I'm not saying that that's the only way to win in this NBA. You can certainly win in a multitude of ways, but considering where the game is going, it kind of just puts you behind the 8 ball when it comes to finding ways to score. And I think that leads to my second weakness, which you compound that when you lack a lot of shot creators. Again, the Grizzlies weren't a terrible offensive team. They were second half, I believe, in offensive rating. They finished 20. They were good enough offensively, but I think with the team really heavily relying on Ja Morant to create offense for everybody on the team, it does kind of in tough situations and close games. I think we saw it in the Orlando bubble. It does put a lot of stress on their offensive execution. So I think that finding more guys outside of Ja who can create their own shot or just create, period, I think is going to be important. That brings me to wing depth also being an issue. I think that they relied on a lot of players. You mentioned the Iguodala situation. They ended up playing a lot of players on the wing that really weren't all that experienced, and I think they probably could use an upgrade there. Whether you're talking about D'Anthony Melton or you're talking about Grayson Allen, these are young players. I'm not sure if they're players that I'm sure will be long-term NBA role players. So I think that the jury is still out on the wing depth they have. Obviously, Dylan Brooks had a pretty good season, and Kyle Anderson playing the small ball 4. He had also, I thought, played well for them, but they're going to need more depth at that position. So those to me were keys, and we'll see what happens with obviously Winslow coming off injury, and that's one of the issues with his career is that him staying healthy has been a problem. In terms of free agents, you got Josh Jackson, another young wing. That experiment did not work out. He will be a free agent. DeAnthony Melton, as I mentioned, also will be a free agent along with Anthony Tolliver. Jonte Porter has a team option, and then John Conchar and Yuta Watanabe both on two-way deals. And as we mentioned, this is Jason Wexler's team. He's the president of basketball operations. Kendall, again, this is a different scenario from last year, picking at number 2. Now you're at 40. Who would you target with this first pick?
So yeah, you mentioned wing depth for this team. Obviously Justice Winslow, we really haven't seen him in a Memphis Grizzlies uniform, so it'll be interesting to see how that played itself out. Obviously you can't really rely on Justice Winslow to stay healthy anyway, but that he'll be an interesting piece. But he doesn't solve the shooting need that you mentioned. And for me, you mentioned shooting and wing depth. I'm gonna mention a guy. I'm gonna introduce a new player into the court that we haven't really talked about. I'm gonna talk about Jay Scrubb, a JUCO college, a junior college, the best junior college player in the country last season, best junior college recruit in the country last season, who was committed to Louisville. It's a guy Memphis fans may be a little familiar with. Penny and his staff kind of spent a little bit of time recruiting Jay Scrubb, and he is a dynamic scorer and a dynamic shooter of the basketball. Lefty stroke. It reminds you of James Young a little bit. James Young from Kentucky, which I know some fans hear James Young and like, what? That guy, I mean, he wasn't very good, but James Young was a very talented player coming out of Kentucky and was almost a lottery pick for a reason, and projected to be a lottery pick. And Jay Scrubb offered that same skill set of being a guy who's athletic. And I think he's a guy who would relish, whenever you talk about a JUCO guy, you're talking about a guy that isn't afraid of anybody, a guy that is going to have some level of dog in him. It's the same in college football and in college basketball or the NBA. Whenever you're talking about JUCO guys, talking about guys that have seen some stuff. And, I think Jay Scrubb is going to be a really valuable piece. It could be a really valuable piece for any NBA team, but certainly a team like the Grizzlies that needs guys with a chip on their shoulder and needs guys who can provide them shooting. And I think Jay Scrubb would be a guy that would be an interesting piece for them. 6'7", long, could play the 2 and the 3. Not much of a playmaker or a ball handler, but you have John Morant and Tyus Jones, so you don't really need that. And you have Kyle Anderson, so you need a guy who can stand in the corner, stand on the wing, and have a radar jump shot. And I think that's Jay Scrubb.
Yeah, I know the argument can be made. Obviously, we didn't see Jay Scrubb play, Division I basketball, but the argument can certainly be made that had he had gone to Louisville or Memphis and played, Division I basketball, that he would be a first-round pick. Right. His talent level, his skill level is there, and I think when you mention the JUCO guys, these are guys who overlooked, or sometimes the system didn't work in their favor, and they come in with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. Memphis, it's a prerequisite to play on that franchise to have come in with a chip on your shoulder. Right. So Scrubb was a player I considered, and I think that he actually is a really good fit. I went a little north in terms of where Memphis stands, and I'm going with a player that you already identified as a player you really like in the second round. I went Jordan Nwora from Louisville. I think that he fits a lot of the same bill that you're talking about with Jay Scrubb. They need another guy who can make shots, another guy who can create, a guy who's unfazed by the big games and unfazed by maybe the bigger matchups. And I think that he would fit right into that Grizzlies lineup. He knows what it means to play on a team that has a lot of other different players. I think him coming in and filling a role won't be as necessary as as much of a culture shock for him. And right. To me, I actually feel like he reminds me a lot of a guy already on their roster, Dillon Brooks. Yeah. And I think that him playing under Dillon Brooks, I think that you could see a lot of growth in his game. I think he could pick up a lot from a player like Dillon Brooks, another guy who's unheralded, second-round pick, but was a clutch player, a fearless kind of scorer in college that came in the NBA with chip on his shoulder and has made a living and made his stance in the league as a real player. Nwora to me fits a lot of that same mold. So I think that he would be a good fit. But I agree. To me, we both kind of seem to be on the same page where that finding that wing scorer in the second round, I think, has to be where they go.
Another guy I thought about real quick was Cassius Stanley. I'm not sure if he'll be there, but I mean, you want to talk about the highlight reel nature of having guys like John Morant and Cassius Stanley and Justice Winslow potentially on the wing, kind of filling the lane. I mean, that could be a very, very fascinating, a very fascinating, very fun team to watch.
And that's where I agree, and that's where the conversation going to be had about because you're only drafting at 40, will they be willing to make aggressive moves to move up a little bit? I agree. I think Cassius Stanley would be a great fit considering how much they like to run. I mean, between Jackson, Clark, and then obviously with Ja, and then you add someone like Stanley, that has the potential to be dynamite. At 40 feels like, man, if he goes 40, that to me something went wrong with his draft evaluation process. To me, he's not the 40th best player in this draft. He should go to me somewhere in the late first round, really early second round to me. So that might be a situation you may have to move up maybe 4 or 5 spots to get there. If he falls to 40, I think that's definitely another avenue potentially as well. But what do you guys think the Memphis Grizzlies should do with this pick here at number 40? Again, it's a different scenario from the second pick last year, but every pick counts. You want to make them count. You can't just light these picks on fire, especially when you're a team who's young and not drafting certainly high, and small market especially, not having a lot of avenues in terms of big name free agents. The draft is key, so you can't waste these picks. So I'm curious to see what the Memphis Grizzlies are going to do at number 40. Let us know what you guys think they should do in the comments. If you like this video, make sure you give us a like and subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media. Coming down to the wire here with these NBA Draft War Room sessions. For Kendall, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.